Welcome to the podcast Appetite for Distortion, episode number 467. My name is Brando. No theme music today, no segments using Guns N' Roses puns, no sound bites. This is, as the episode title suggests, I'm dedicating this to Lucy-Bleu Night in her memory. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you know that she was the stepdaughter of Slash and daughter of Megan, his longtime girlfriend, only 25 years old, passed away. So I wanted to do, well, I don't even know if I said I wanted to do. I've been mulling over doing this episode, having this conversation with you, because if you would listen to this podcast at all, obviously the theme of Appetite for Distortion is Guns N' Roses, uh, with our 6 degrees of Guns N' Roses bacon, trying to connect whatever guest topic, and that's the main theme. But the underlying theme, which often Guns N' Roses connects to, and unfortunately in this situation, I get it does, having affected Slash and his family, is mental health. Because when I started this podcast about around 8 years ago, just maybe a few months before Guns N' Roses officially reunited, the big three, that I thought it was a silly idea when my current friend, former co-host Ian Scotto, thought about doing he's like said to me, let's do a Guns N' Roses podcast. I'm like, why? It's got to be more than just the music. And this band is more than just the music. I don't think you could be a Guns N' Roses fan and not understand that. And, in my career, my radio career, which I guess if you want to say started in 2001 in college at a half a hops radio. I just wanted to talk about music on the air and tell jokes and make people laugh. Then I had like morning show exposure later on in my career, and just how to approach that, especially when serious things happen. And I never thought in my life that I would be talking about mental health and talking about my life in this fashion. So this episode, just so you know, is not going to be about any sort of details or information that really extend more than what is public to us about Lucy-Bleu. This is more of in her spirit and wanting to talk about if you are suffering and the unfortunate inside knowledge that I guess I have and want to share. And I waited to post any sort of news because Slash postponed 4 dates of his Serpent festival, the blues festival, which, as I'm recording this, I'm going Sunday. I'm hoping it doesn't rain. I do not have luck. All right, at least, yeah. I mentioned that a couple episodes ago. I went to go see the Foo Fighters. They should have played at least another hour, but halfway through, thunderstorms. And I don't know if I mentioned it on the same episode. I only know this because of Facebook memories. It was 5 years to the same day that they happened when I went with my wife to Dave Matthews, which that I did not mind getting rained out. She was upset. So she's only gone to what, 73 and a half shows, something like that. But I digress. So I'm not going to go any detail about her because it's a situation I know too much about. And many of you know that. Because so when I waited to post this, because I would see other fan groups and fan sites reporting why Slash postponed these dates. And with good reason, like, okay, this person did this, I see this, that, but I felt uncomfortable until it comes from the family. This is really all speculation, or it's just not an appropriate time. And by that I mean, they have the actual grief part of this. Then with someone like Slash, he's got to deal with it publicly. So it really, with me, or you perhaps, you only deal with it privately, which is hard enough. So to deal with it publicly is a whole other, is something that is not lost on me with any celebrity or famous person suffering. Where you look on social media and there are a lot of those who mock. I saw today, Pete Davidson, the comedian, checking himself into a mental health facility, and he's had his documented struggles with drugs and mental illness, and seeing like laugh reacts. So what, you don't like Pete Davidson? You're jealous because he gets girls? So you're gonna laugh at his mental struggle? I mean, you hope he doesn't, he survives and doesn't go the way of some of his fellow comedians because a lot of comedians are depressed. I'm not a comedian, but I understand using humor as a defense mechanism. So it's just, it's trying to change I'm trying to help change the stigma because it is really interesting that, at least from my perspective, so I lost my dad to suicide. It's just it's weird saying it. If I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, uncomfortable yet it's something I think about. It's like, oh, I lost my family member in a car accident or to cancer or so many variety of horrible, horrible ways I don't want to wish on anybody. But there's something about taking in your own life and like how do you navigate forward with that, the stigma. And I'm trying to change that because mental illness is just that. It's like any other organ or your body attacking you. Your brain is being attacked by I don't know how many variables. It depends on the person. It could be chemical, it could be, passed down, it could be environmental, it could be just just getting to a point where you're just having so many bad days in a row, it's overcome your life, and like you're stuck. Okay, where do I go? So there's just so many variables that go into what is depression, and it's a hard battle. I'm glad that we're finally talking about this because, so again, from my perspective, I lost my dad 11 years ago, pretty much around this time, maybe like a month or so ago was the anniversary of it. And I'll get back to that portion because I feel so like the need to, and thankfully with your belief in me and your supportiveness, I'm talking to you, everyone who's listening, because when I posted some information about Lucy-Bleu passing and possibly wanting to do this episode, just got more than enough support on any of the social sites, DMs, people saying, I like when you talk about this stuff. It could help somebody, it could help me, even if it helps one person. So this made it worth it, or is making it worth it. Given I don't know where I'm even going with this, I think it's just me turning on record right now is the most important thing. At least the message is just to talk, to get it out, and how in whatever way to get it out, to communicate. Like I think Slash gets out a lot through the guitar. That's how he communicates. The episode before this, talking with Jackie Benson, saying that she wasn't that confident or she didn't think her voice was strong enough. So sometimes she lets her guitar speak for her. So that's a way of doing it, whether it's writing, for again, me podcasting, radio, talking to a therapist, talking to a friend, however you find your voice, that's the way to cure this. That's part of the way to cure this. So, and I'll get into that as well. So the only thing I want to really report on, and this is just because it's public, it's what Slash and Megan have said, and I just don't want this to be lost because again, I'm just I've been thinking about for days what I want to talk about, what I want to say, how I want to say it, what am I going to say, what am I not going to say, and I just feel I've been 100% truthful and honest, and whatever comes out comes out. I feel like I can shape this well enough, so hopefully this conversation between you and I does some good. So anyway, uh, so anyway, uh, just over a week ago, as I'm recording this, Slash had confirmed the passing of his stepdaughter Lucy, and I I did not have the pleasure of meeting this young lady. I would see her pop up on Instagram because, of course, I follow Slash. I like Megan stuff a lot. She shares a lot of Guns N' Roses, especially when they're on tour stuff. And you see Lucy-Bleu in there. Which just seemed like a beautiful young girl, whole life ahead of her, just having I mean, Instagram is only a portion of your life. I didn't make any assumptions, but I just like just seemed like very nice and just like a very sweet girl. I had no, just so you know, I had no aspirations to try to reach out to interview her because she just seemed like a normal kid. I reached out to London Hudson, Slash's son, when he was 15, only because at the time he had a band and it was starting to be reported publicly about this band. So I'm thinking, okay, let me try for an interview. Little did I know I would be like the first one to ask and like develop, enough of a relationship to get London on another time or two. But I never want to just go after, like when I had Duff's brother or on, they're older people, they're grown men. And with Susan, she had a book to promote. So I mean, there are some family members that we was using our 6 degrees of GNR bacon that I have reached out to, have had it on the show. Some I want to get, like, Grace McKagan and her band, so music. It makes sense. But her Lucy, she just seemed like Lucy-Bleu, nice girl. Just seemed like a nice, sweet girl. Uh, just if anything, it just made me think of like, wow, if I was her age, I would be too nervous to talk to her. Like that's how I look at things. 25. I so vividly remember being 25 and being depressed. So before we get to that, I just want to say what Slash had said. My heart is permanently fractured. I will never stop missing you. Yeah, no, he said never ever stop missing you and remembering what a beacon of happiness, laughter, and creativity and beauty you've always been and still are. The brightest light in the lives of so many that have loved you so much. And I find solace in the hope that you are at peace now. I will love you eternally. Because there was speculation on, about what happened. And it's not, I understand it's human nature to be curious, but it's really not, it's not your business. And again, to talk about it, it's difficult. It's one thing, okay, cancer. But to think that, which some people do, that if you make that choice, that says something about you in the way that they think it means something about you that's not accurate. It's the stigma to it, where, again, let's start with that word choice. You have no idea what she thought her choices were, and I'm not here to speculate. I'll say about what I know, what my dad thought his choices were. He thought he was doing right by his family. He thought he wouldn't be missed. He thought we just needed, like, I can help my family more with the insurance money. As fucked up as that sounds, but that's how he felt. Because he was a loving father, loved us, but he was so much in pain that he thought he was doing the right thing. And he didn't. He didn't. I mean, I could sit here now, talk to you, and be in a good place in my life with a wife and a baby. And who knows where my life would be if my dad was around. I would like to think baby Brownstone would still be here in some way, still get here. But but my dad would be, he would be, I don't know. I really, he would have struggled to have gotten through COVID if he lived during that time because he was a little bit of a germaphobe and dentistry. I mean, with all the mandates and and masks, would his business have survived? I thought about that. And so he really would have went through it again. But you just get to this point, and it's like I know what being a grandfather would have done to him. And would that have changed something? I don't know. These are all speculations. None of us are in these people's minds. That's what's so scary about it. So that's why it's important to speak up if you see someone struggling. And I don't know Lucy's history. I don't know about, therapy or any of that with her. Again, it's not my job. This is once again an episode in the spirit of her because if and this was actually, I thought about this before, and I'm glad to see this post from Megan when she posted Lucy's obituary to kind of to do something in her name. And this is kind of like what I'm doing. So you can make uh, a donation in Lucy-Blue's name. And you can go to legacy.com and her uh, obituary is up there. And So what is this? This is for, I just want to make sure I get all the information right. You can make a donation to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, in her name. Of course, the family is requesting privacy, but she did say you can make a donation to Namie, Lucy-Blue's name. If we can help save someone's life who is struggling with depression, anxiety, mental illness, this will give me hope for a brighter future for honoring my child. If you or someone know someone that is thinking about suicide, please call or text. Excuse me. Legacy.com. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'll put the link to that as well in the summary in the comment section, and just the summary, the bio of this episode. So that's what I'm doing here, and I've gotten over the course of doing this podcast. I mentioned, and that's the crazy thing. This podcast is the kind of the genesis. It came from me struggling, me talking to my therapist, thinking about what can I do with my life to give me purpose. I wasn't so I was 25 where I had like a midlife. I'm 40, I'm gonna be 41 in September, which is crazy to me. Because 25, I remember having like almost like a midlife crisis, what I thought was a midlife crisis, and just not being happy with where I was, who I was, not in any successful relationship. Not my career wasn't where I wanted it to be. Radio was such a struggle for many years for me. I mean, I'm very, knock on wood, lucky to be in a position where I am right now, career wise, with iHeart and Premiere, and to have this podcast stem from it. I mean, it's incredible because when I think back to 25, I was still, excuse me, since it's just me, I can't depend on a co-host. So excuse me while I sip some water if you don't mind. I remember when I went to Cape Cod for my first, I moved away from New York to Cape Cod for my first on-air job. And I said to myself, I got to be full time by the time I'm 28 because I started looking at DJs, um, not the turntable DJs, but radio DJs, their ages on New York City websites. Um, Knowing that, okay, I'm 23, I got to work my way up. I remember this. And knowing that nothing was going to be handed to me, I got to work for. That's why I moved out of New York. I got to work my way up. And it took like 7 years. I was 28 and a half when I finally got a full-time gig in radio. Because I going the on-air route as opposed to just being a board op or a producer. But even then, that was part art on air, part producer. So I mean, that's all radio. I'm wearing many hats, but still, it took me that long. Otherwise, I'm going to reassess my life. So it just worked out somehow, 28 and a half. But 25, I mean, the same age as Lucy, being depressed, going out with my birthday on my birthday with friends, never enjoying my birthday because just a reminder of like that. Like I have nothing. I'd say that I have nothing. I am nothing. That was almost a mantra I had. I have nothing. I am nothing. How fucked up is that? So that's what a birthday was to me. That's why I always think about that when people really are like, happy birthday to me, which is fine if you're that person. But I just think about like, man, birthdays to me were just like, I'm like, you know what? Another year towards death. Cool. I wished for death. I prayed for it. Whether I don't know if it stems from a um, a hereditary thing because of, obviously with my dad and that side of the family there is some history there, or it stems from my physical disability, which some of you may know about, some don't. That actually I think I could do this in the video. Oh, nope. I left my leg braces in the bedroom. So yeah, I have a demyelinating peripheral neuropathy, which is in layman's terms a nerve version of muscular dystrophy. There's something missing in the nerves, so the message doesn't really get there from the brain. So the muscles are weaker. So I deal with a lot of muscle fatigue, weakness, stamina, balance. Thankfully, no pain, just emotional. That was my joke growing up. Just like, just trying to, again, what I said earlier, humor as a defense mechanism. And that's what it was. And I remember like when I finally decided to put myself out there. One of the few, there's a few things that I made a decision to change my life, and it just took a very long time. And that's what I want, something else to come across. You could be like, my dad was 59, Lucy was 25. I mean, it's a journey. My dad, I think, went to therapy since he was 19 until the day he died. So, was it the right person for him? Did that therapist stave off him wanting to do this many years ago? But for me, I went to therapy at 26 and I'm here right now. I don't want to say it like that right now. I'm here. Uh, I'll admit this to you because that's what I feel like this takes a lot to admit. And if I saw this, it's things have changed a year after my dad died when Robin Williams took his life. I felt like the whole world was like, holy shit. If Robin Williams could do this, and then you got Anthony Bourdain a few years later, and it's like, oh my God, like when you have that kind of life and money, I don't get it. The world's changed because now I will see commercials for literally a daughter sitting with her father talking about suicide. A commercial that if I saw 12 years ago may have changed my life. So it's important to talk about. Like I see that and I'm like, wow. Because a lot of those, there could be a lot of those commercials that are corny, especially when if you're pushing medication. This one wasn't pushing medication. It was just more about talking and maybe like an app. I honestly forget. I mean, I remember the context of the commercial, but not the product. But I thought the message itself, regardless, was good to see. But I was crying myself to sleep, like at 26, and being like, I'm so unhappy with where I am. Like with how my perception of myself, how I felt others perceive me, just hating myself, which took a long time to admit. When I was in Cape Cod, only took 2 dates with this girl for her to tell a mutual friend, I don't like him anymore. He hates himself. And I was like, whoa, I really do. And people could see that. All right, let me so it was when I moved back to New York that I started going to therapy and knowing that, my dad went to therapy, but he was still he was a great father, but he had anger issues. Thinking like, okay, what good does it do? What are my brothers started going? And I didn't get it. I'm like, you're physically capable, you're younger and taller than me, you're handsome, like you're smart. What do you have to be sad about? And he said to me once, you don't know what's going on in my brain. And obviously now I realize that I understand that because you don't know what's going on. And it's my brother, somebody I should know and at the time living with. No, no, I wasn't living with him at that time, but have lived with. So when you meet a stranger, it's like there are a lot of assholes out there, but it's to take that into account. That's how the conversation really changes. It doesn't, it gets to a point where there is no excuse to stop being an asshole. But I think that's where the pivot goes to. I can talk about what it's like to lose somebody to yourself wanting to not be here. So the change goes in with it starts with you. Like Michael Jackson said, that man in the mirror. I don't know why I went with that analogy, but I needed some comedic relief, I guess, defense mechanism. So look at that man or woman or whatever in the mirror, and it just starts there. I remember a friend told me, 'cause I hated myself. He's like, just look in the mirror and just go, you are so good looking. I'm like, what? And every time I would just say it just to make myself laugh. But there in itself, you made yourself laugh. You just changed your mood. And then some days maybe you might believe it, like, oh, all right, maybe in this shirt, I don't look so bad. I look pretty good. So it's just changing your mindset. And that's what therapy helps with, changing your mindset, in addition to if there is an actual chemical thing wrong with you, because your brain is still a functioning organ in your body that can go wrong. I think that's lost on people. Um, no matter how educated you are. My dad was a dentist, very educated, so smart, maybe too smart for his own good. And then on this, when you're younger, you just have all this. You haven't lived. I hate to say, at 25, you lived your life, but there's so much more left to live, and you just don't know yet. You haven't seen that side. So there's so many ways to see it, to look at it, variables, and not seeing that side. But it's so easy, yeah, for me to say this now, because when you're in it, there is no help. Yeah, that's bullshit. Nothing. You don't know my situation. Just you are cloaked in depression. You are being as sad as you don't want to get up. You don't want to shower. You don't want to do anything. Just getting by. You eat just to nourish. You don't really enjoy it. So I remember those moments of just kind of thinking about just the word suicide over and over and over again. Never taking an attempt. I will say that because I always thought the irony of it all that my dad would not be able to survive if I did. And then once he did, I'm the oldest of four. I'm the Leonardo of the Ninja Turtles. I can't do that. I can't do that. And still struggling at that time, and now of course having a son, but thinking about how did my dad do that when you see your baby? And I'm sure he was good at my age. I'm sure when he had me, he was good. And just knowing that life can still get to you at points where it's something that doesn't necessarily go away. You work on it. That's why you say you're a recovering alcoholic because it never goes away. And that's okay. It's part of life. No one has life figured out. No one. If anyone claims they do, yeah, self help works. And that's part of what I'm doing now. But no one knows the actual answer. That's the unknown. That's one of the great questions. But you have to find your answer to another one of the great questions, which is find your purpose. Find something that you enjoy doing every day. And that started with me with, you know, Guns N' Roses. That's why we're here on this podcast. But before the podcast came, I guess when I became so invested, which seems counterintuitive, horror movies. I became obsessed with horror movies. It's like, oh, you're depressed? Let's watch this movie about murder and mayhem and all the blood and guts. But I loved it. I don't know. Or I loved it. Also, it helped. It projected my anger and pain onto something else, and it wasn't a real. It was a story. It was a movie. So I would project some. It's crazy now that I think about it. I really projected a lot of pain. I remember watching a lot of horror that now that I saw during my height of depression, and it's not having the same effect. It be, maybe, yeah, of course, that could be with any movie, but just knowing how I just wanted to feel their pain, whatever the suffering they were going through at that time, and just putting myself into the screen somehow in a variety of awful horror movies, which one day appetite for horror will come back if I ever have when I have time again. I love talking about it, but yeah, but that I'm just giving you an example of what can you find. So yeah, this podcast came out of that. So Ian, I'm grateful that because I thought podcasts were silly at the time. Now that they're serious, people can. I see what I've done with that. Getting published by very reputable online magazines and interview really cool people. But at the time, I'm like, why? So what made seem silly is that this podcast gave me some self-worth to know that I can create something and people will like it. Most people will like it. So it's just important to adm- admit to yourself because you can have bad days. I still have bad days. My wife knows that I have ebbs and flows. I don't react to them the same way. I just may not be as perky one day as I am another. That's the extent that I let it show outwardly. My brain can still be a sea of the most horrible thoughts possible. And it's crazy. It's like, why am I still thinking about that or this? So it's something to still navigate and to be aware of. So being you are not alone in any of that. That I went to my therapist at 26 with a list of things that were wrong with me that I thought were wrong with me. And also, am I messed up because I like horror movies? All these things. And I'm lucky I found somebody that was right for me. Because I'll say the psychiatrists, the one that could prescribe the medication that I've seen, haven't been that invested, but they're a little different. But this therapist that I guess she's a clinic social worker, a few other doctor degrees. Her name is Susan, just so you know. She's a real person. Uh, she is the right person for me because she did not put up with my shit. I am somebody, I needed to challenge somebody because here's the thing, which many of you have done, and I've heard. I've spoken to my friends. I've had a therapist that didn't work. Uh, it took a lot for me to, I don't want to say respect that I'm on some pedestal, but someone to be like really respect their opinion about me. That do they understand all the negativity that I believe? Like, am I really gonna buy what they're selling? Like, oh, the grass is always greener, or whatever pitch they're gonna give me. So I needed some sort of medical diagnosis because I'm the kind of person you can't argue with science. Science can change, of course, but I need tangible. Why is this? So what's going on with the serotonin? What chemically is wrong that I can't fix by myself? Because I thought that at the beginning. I refused to take medication for the first 3 months, think that I could fix this. And she said after three, I'm like, I can keep taking your money, but you will never get better. And over the past several years, I've tried to wean myself off. And whenever I get to like maybe weaning myself off, I am more irritable. I'm angry. I let things get to me more. It's in a different place. On the flip, because I believe people can be over medicated while I still struggle, I'm afraid to start chasing something. So I'm chasing some sort of euphoria that's going to stay with me. I have to understand life's going to have that's life, good and bad. That's how I deal with it. So I don't, well, it could be suggested, yeah, maybe you can get this added on, you can up your dosage. Who knows what's in the future? But right now, that's how I feel. And I think that's important also to look at because that's a message I don't want to be lost. Oh, therapy, medication, because there are people who are against that. And if that's your experience, that's your experience. But when I met Susan, she's like a Judge Judy type. Like she didn't put up with, she was smart, had an answer for everything, funny, and just could push back on me. And if I ever pushed back, she didn't put up with it. Session over, and then I would be like, no, 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 I'm sorry, I'm sorry, sorry. Just a very special relationship that I was lucky to have. That I am lucky to still have. You got to find that. If it's not this therapist, it's the next one. If it's not this friend, it's the next one. Or if it's the right person you meet, you can have a certain conversation that you on a random night that just something about it. And I'm not talking about meeting the one or something, but you can have a nice interaction that can make your day or break your day. So these are things to think about because then those could start to tumble and domino effect into something else. And be aware of that. At the end of the day, why am I so angry? Well, this happened and that happened, this happened. And just start to dissect it. Okay. Well, that person cut me off. Should that was that personal? Was that person? That's on them. That's on them. They want to risk getting into a car accident. I'm not going to be involved. It's like things all of us live with that can contribute to stress and anger, all of that. So I don't know because I'm not here to, I was never going to speculate why Lucy. I don't, that's a horrible question that her parents have to face. and just think about, because that's something I got to think about, and to see the I don't want to report it if it's taken down. I mean, I'll look anyway, but it's like it's just like we're to be a public figure and to deal with this. The fact that she still has her Instagram up, and yeah, and her what's could be deemed as a suicide note, it's just gut wrenching, gut wrenching. We found a couple of my dad's after. I have one of them saved in my phone. Like it's fucked up, and to have that again publicly. So when like things like this, when we have Jacoby Chaddock from Papa Roach on the show, and Dorothy, and I believe we're going to get Dorothy on again for a longer amount of time this time. They they redid the song "Shine a Light On" that Papa Roach did in support of mental health and depression and suicide, and you get people mocking it on Blabbermouth. And look, you don't have to like either band. You're not cool if you say that you don't. No one thinks you're cool. It's like an uncool thing. Being uncool, like being like the Beavis and Butthead, that was in fashion for a while. And now you just come off like a tool. And then again with this, what they're trying to message, what they're trying to do, and help, because they've had friends who have lost their lives the same way. So that's how the conversation changes. You can't say you're for mental health and then make a post like that or make a comment like that. And I have to catch myself too. I do. I'm not perfect. I can get angry. I can say the wrong thing. Um, the other day, this is funny. I don't know if anyone will understand this reference. Maybe Sal, who listens to both shows, but I listened to the Michael K show here in New York, and one of his co-hosts, Peter Rosenberg, who was also one of the morning show co-hosts on Hot 97. I don't listen to that because that's not my type of music, and maybe that lends itself to what I'm going to say. That they'll talk on music on this Michael K show, which is all about sports: Yankees, Mets, Rangers, Knicks, Giants, all that fun stuff. So like me, where you have a nucleus, Guns N' Roses, you'll talk about other things. So they talk about music. There is a guy on there that knows kind of rock, Don LaGreca, but Peter, he's a rap guy, hip hop guy, fine, and he didn't know the Stroke, and that bothered me. I'm just like, how do you not know that song? And be in music and work in radio. Like, how do you not know? Have you ever seen Billy Madison? How do you not know that? So I was like, it just bothered me. And the way he kind of like, I don't know that song, the way I just took it. I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to be an ass. And I tweeted at him, like, that's an embarrassing, take that you had. And he actually responded. I saw this because I get to watch it simulcast on TV. So as I'm like doing work, I see him respond. Nothing was called out or Brandon or Appetite but then this is the truth. I immediately felt bad. I felt not because of anything that he said, because I thought what he said was like, oh, it's people of a certain age. I'm younger. He's not a hip hop guy, not not a rock and roll guy. Again, I thought I think the Stroke is just one of the. Yeah, I know it's not Stairway to Heaven, but it's a song that everyone should know. Or if you're any sort of music fan of a certain age, you should know. And it's just, I just thought like a little jab, and I immediately just felt bad. I'm like, this is somebody else who talks about mental health and who struggled. He does spots for mental health, and I'm like, you know what? I deleted the tweet after. Not like it mattered, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna do that again. That was like me just being like little jerk instigator. Brandon came up, which I am at times. I admit that. So again, I'm not perfect. I see that. Because sometimes I like to stir up shit. I just try not to do that as much anymore. So I'm not gonna. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I want to be honest about everything because that's the kind of show I want to build about Guns N' Roses and honesty and just us enjoying our lives for just a few whatever this episode length is, amount of time, just to enjoy and escape, because I've heard that from people. I've heard, your podcast is a nice break from this world. I've heard from at least a couple people that they stopped drinking because of me. I mean, that's what that was not my goal, just a wonderful byproduct that I can have that sort of impact or just influence. The word influencer is overused today, and I kind of am disgusted by it. But that's a in the positive, just literal sense. That's a good influence. Like I try to be a good influence on my younger brothers. I mean, they're all good grown men, but I want to be a good influence. I want to be a good influence on my son, but I still see those flaws in myself. Damn. But at the same time, you can't be too hard on yourself. To err is human. Someone say famous once said, you got to forgive yourself. And that's something I still struggle with. Is forgiving yourself. So I can go on and on and on and on about just giving you sob stories about my dad, uh, different place times in my life where I did want to end it. I just didn't want to be here. Uh, I was just again, because again, I hoping, praying for cancer, and yeah, some things I'm just like I'm going through my mind where I'm just like kind of stuttering a bit more than usual. It's just like, is it necessary for me to share that? I don't know. If you ask me, perhaps, but now I just don't know if it's going to add to the story because yeah, maybe some things are meant to be private. It's what Slash and Megan. I don't know what they're going to feel because I felt like it was on my forehead for the long like dad killed himself on like on my forehead. That's all anyone saw. That's how I felt, and especially with people who knew me and know me and knew my dad, that's just how they're going to treat me, how they're going to look at me. It is so it's not just the loss itself, it's the continuation, I think, needs to be understood, especially if you are struggling and you love your family. No, it's not just getting over the loss, which never happens. It's just the continued all the variables you don't think about. Like I couldn't talk to my best friends for a couple years. Just everything just felt like I just felt cloaked in this. I really was a hermit. Really didn't do much for 2 years, like hanging out. But it was just it's crazy that it lasted that long to do that. Kind of that's where just drinking myself to sleep at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and hiding it because I didn't want my brothers, my younger brothers, to see their older brother this way. Trying to be strong for them but weak for myself, which was silly. That's stupid. So if I'm weak for myself, I'm just weak for them. They're gonna know one way or another, or just the way I act, or the way I'm not there for them. That's gonna come out. But again, I'm here now, definitely wounded with this life that I've again living with a disability now. And some of you have seen in pictures, and I've talked about what it's like living in a wheelchair when the big crowds, amusement parks, concerts, doing that. I wear leg braces, cane. That's my normal transport if it's not too much walking. Around the house, I walk like how my son does, which is sounds so sad. It's like you hold on to stuff, keep your balance upright. Baby brownstone takes like a few steps at a time, but still is just crawling around everywhere. So that's how I get around my house because I don't want to wear my leg braces in my house. I just want to be comfortable and just dealing with that. And it's just a never ending struggle. So I'm always going to be, but I'm in a good place. And again, with this outlet that you permit me to have, that so many of you said, please talk about this. Because I'm like, who cares about me? Who gives a shit? Well, as a conversation I always bring, interview I always bring up is the one with Dave Navarro. And before he goes into which I'll get into himself and what people, well, I'll say the misconception people have about like, oh, he had all this money. What is there to be sad about? No existential thing will cure deeply rooted trauma. So it is not much how much money he made. He had everything. Depression is depression. So he said to me, he's like, well, it's one thing for a rock star to say it because there are people who are going to say that, but you're just a guy for the most part. People are going to believe you. So if that's what's happening here, if that happens at all, I hope and pray because just I'd miss you, your family would miss you. Don't do it. And if you feel if it's never gonna get better, just you have to battle it out, man. You just have to battle it out. And you don't know what's gonna happen. The fact that I got married, was it 39, 40? have a kid now. I just never thought this stuff was going to happen. Again, I wanted to end my life in my 20s, and it's just it breaks my heart. I didn't know her, but the loss of Lucy-Bleu breaks my heart for her parents, for herself, and she probably had such a bright future ahead of her. And it's just, it's not fair. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, and this is not fair. So we want to do what's fair. We want to do what's fair to us, to our mind, to know it can get better for people who love us. Even though you don't think somebody does love you, someone out there cares. Or you're going to meet somebody out there who cares. You have to just battle it out. Or if you see somebody, and this is hard for me too, as much as I talk, I'm behind this safety net of a radio mic of now pre-recording. Maybe I regret this whole conversation and I delete it. Maybe I do. I don't know. At the as this moment as I'm recording. But if you see somebody struggling, you have to say, "Are you all right, man?" If they're being like an asshole, they're screaming, "Are you okay?" Instead of screaming back and escalating the situation. What's going on? Are you all right? Like you gotta talk, be able someone to be able to be comfortable with you, or just they don't. No, I'm fine. Okay, just know I care. Just if anything's crazy, all right, fine, fine, no worries. It's sometimes little things like that. It makes all the difference. As far as I know, we're on this planet once and we're gone. So let's take care of ourselves and the people we love around us as best as we can. Right? All right. That does it. Thanks for listening if you made it to the end for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When is the next one? Well, the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy. I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.